What's up, friends? Welcome to another video of the MD Journey, where my goal is to help you succeed in med school with less stress. My name is Lakshya. In this video, I'm going to teach you my step-by-step method on how to study during your clinical rotations. And at the very end, I'll talk about a resource that I just love using for clinical rotations, and I may just have a discount for you guys, so stay tuned. If you're new to this channel and you like what you hear, give a like to this video down below, consider subscribing and joining the community, but no more time to waste, let's get to that intro. So how do you study for your clinical rotations? So this is the step-by-step method that I've created over a span of several rotations, so hopefully this will help you out. So the first tip that I have for you is you make sure that you decide on the resources you're going to use from the very start. If you're not sure what resources to use, then check out the mdjourney.com, where I've written a blog post on every single rotation I've done so far on how they helped me get honors on those rotations. But once you know the recommended resources, figure out which 2 to maybe 3 resources you want to use during your 4 to 8 week rotation. And once you decide on your resources, do your best to just stick with them throughout your rotation. Unless you really despise one, then that's a good reason on changing. So tip number 2 is creating a study schedule and then underestimating how compliant you're going to be with it. So once you come up with the text that you're going to be reading and the question bank you're going to be using, kind of figure out how many pages you have to read every night or how many chapters you have to read every week and how many practice questions you have to be doing on a day-to-day basis. That way you have enough time to review before your shelf exam. Once you come up with your study schedule, make sure you insert these buffers where if you come home, and this is going to happen, you simply may not have the motivation to do some work. So adding these buffers into your study schedule prevents you from getting behind on studying for your shelf exams. So for example, if you think it's going to take you 3 weeks to do a question bank for a specific rotation, then give yourself 3.5 weeks. That way you can account for any days that you came home, didn't have motivation, or you had separate plans, or you had to do something else for the rotation and you just didn't have enough time to study. So step 3 that I like to use to study for clinical rotations is using a technique or a method that I like to call the notebook method. So I know you guys can't see, so I'll put some screenshots on the screen, and you can also check out the link down below where I give specific instructions on how I use the notebook method. But basically a very simple version of it is that when I'm reading my text and I'm reading a chapter, I'll write the name of the chapter on the left-hand side. And as I'm going through a chapter, I'm looking for big ideas, which I can put into the form of a question. And on the very far right side, I'll put the answers pertaining to it. So for example, here's a notebook method that I used for my OB-GYN rotation, and that shelf exam was the highest that I had gotten this far. And as I'm reading a chapter, here's a chapter about twins, I'm just putting major questions that I noticed during my reading. And then on the right side, I'm putting my answers. So one of the questions is, what's the complications of having twins? And then on the right side, I have the answers to those. So as I'm going through the chapters, what I like to do is I'll put them in a question and answer form, and then I will review them by going through the questions and doing my best to answer all of them, and then looking at the answers. And if I can't answer something specifically, then I'll do the whole page over again. This is a good way of learning all the material together. So I'll learn everything I need to about the twins. Some stuff I may learn 3 or 4 times and I may get them right on my first time. And some things may take me 3 to 4 iterations until I finally get the answer. So using this technique was great to distill like a 500-page textbook into maybe, I think this is like 20 pages of material. And I can just do 2 to 3 pages every night very quickly because I've seen the material when I was reading, and then I can quickly just flip through the questions and answers very briefly. So give the notebook method a try if you're struggling on how to study for your clinical rotations. Even if you're doing question banks, which are great options and I like to do them as well, this is a great way for me to kind of stay fresh on the textbook that I'm reading, and this way I don't forget chapter 1 when I'm on chapter 60. So the 4th step that I like to take to study for my clinical rotations is adding Anki Decks and flashcards into my downtime. So when I'm walking from the garage to the hospital in the morning or vice versa in the afternoon, or if there's a boring lunch lecture and I'm just not paying attention, I'll do anywhere from 10 to 20 flashcards in one sitting, and this is really helpful for me to kind of hit the high yield material that people have already created. I'll link down below to the broencephalon deck that I like to use for studying for my step 2 and my clinical rotations, which are very high yield and they're very easy to learn and just very quick to just get through. So I recommend you just start doing these Anki cards from day 1 of your clinical rotations. There's usually not that many in the broencephalon deck that I recommend, so you can probably finish them within the first 2 weeks, And that way, even if you still have 4 more weeks of your rotation, you've probably already gotten a good glimpse of what the high yield material is, and you'll get much better when you have to read your text and you have to do your yall questions. So my 5th tip on how to study well for your clinical rotations is making sure you do your practice questions from the very start. So I've seen medical students who don't do their yall questions until maybe 2/3 into the rotation. That's simply the wrong approach to take. The best way to learn is just making mistakes through your practice questions. So going back to the 2nd tip, when you come up with your study schedule, make sure your practice questions are a part of it from the very start. This is especially important for rotations like internal medicine, which have like 1,400 yall questions, and if you wait too long to start them, you simply won't finish. And the last thing that I like to do, and this is by far my favorite resource for clinical rotations, is using online med-ed. So online med-ed is full of amazing videos that kind of walk you through very high yield material in a very step-by-step manner. They're absolutely amazing, but the notes which come with their premium content are just clutch when it comes to the last few weeks and the last few days of studying for your rotation. So I make sure that when I'm deciding my study resources, that online med-ed is part of it. If you guys are interested in checking out online med-ed, then I'll put a link down below in the description. If you sign up for an annual subscription, you can actually get $80 off using the link down below. But it's a resource that I highly recommend for clinical students. It just does a really good job of pointing out and highlighting the high yield material in a very cohesive manner. So check out the link down below in the description if you're interested. I'll make a totally different video on my review of online med-ed and kind of go through step by step on how I use it. And really quickly, I'm just gonna give you one extra tip. During your last week of your rotation, make sure to do 2, if not 3 or 4 NBME exams. They're just the best representation of what the real test will look like. Yall is great, but sometimes it's harder and sometimes it's easier. So doing an NBME exam 2 to 3 to 4 during your last week and planning that out in your study schedule is crucial. But there you guys have it. That's my way from start to finish on how I study for my clinical rotations. Hope you guys enjoyed that video, but now I want to hear from you guys. So comment below and let me know what your favorite tip or technique is to study for your clinical rotations and your shelf exams. But thank you guys so much for watching. If you're new to this channel, again, consider subscribing. I put out new content on a weekly basis. The mdjourney.com has 70+ blog posts, and I'm posting new blog posts every week to multiple times a week. So check the mdjourney.com out. The link's also in the description. But again, thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one, my friends.